Uranium Energy Corp, one of only 12 uranium producers in the world. UEC trades on the New York Stock Exchange. They have more than doubled their in-ground uranium resource over the past 2 years. They've also become one of only 6 uranium producers in the United States. Led by Amir Adnani, who has been ranked as one of the top resource CEOs by Casey Research, Amir has attracted major investors like Rick Rule of Sprott Asset Management, Li Ka-shing, the richest man in Asia, and institutions such as Vanguard and BlackRock. Learn more about Uranium Energy Corp at uraniumenergy.com or by calling 866-748-1030. Greetings and thank you for joining us at FutureMoneyTrends.com. I'm here with Steve Moore. He was a former chief editor for the Wall Street Journal and now is the chief economist for the Heritage Foundation. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Pleasure to see you here at a Casey Summit. You know, Casey Research puts on these great conferences. Yeah. You're a big free market advocate.
Yeah.
What's your overall assessment of the U.S. economy right now? Is the U.S. in recovery? Or because a lot of people, the Dow's at an all-time high, but I talk to a lot of people, they just don't feel like, you know, it just doesn't feel like the 90s or something. You know, the U.S. economy feels like we never left Lehman.
Yeah. So you're right about that. This has been a recovery that we've grown, you know, since June of 2009 when the recession officially ended. The growth rate has been about 2%. That's pretty flimsy, you know, really pretty pitiful given how deep the economy fell. Usually when you have a deep recession, you have a real rapid catch-up period. Right, snapback, that's good. We haven't really seen that. I mean, if you look in the Reagan years, for example, there were quarters when we had 7-8% growth. We haven't come anywhere near that. And so, you know, there is a growth deficit. And it's also true, you know, if you talk to the man on the street, look at polling, half of Americans think we're still in a recession. So there is that negative kind of attitude because a lot of people haven't seen income gains. I mean, to put it very simply, the average American worker hasn't seen a pay raise in 6 years. Now, going forward, I'm a little more optimistic than most people here at this conference. I'm not a gold bug. I think that, look, I mean, the gold price has gone from $1,800 to $1,250 or something like that, so it's been a tough period for the gold. One of the interesting things that's happened to the economy as I look just in the last 3 or 4 months has been the dramatic rise in the dollar relative to other currencies and to gold. That is a bullish sign for the U.S. economy because it means capital is flowing into the United States.
Do you think the precious metals falling could actually be an indicator of deflation? I mean, could the metals be leading the way?
Maybe. You know, you never know. I'm not a big believer that we're going to see deflation. In fact, I think, if anything, we're going to start to see inflation rates and interest rates rise. Not a lot, but I think it's tough to say. But look, I'm not, you know, that's a tough call to make, but I will say this. I think that if you got, my area of expertise is more looking at how the political scene is influencing Wall Street and you know, companies. You've got a president in office who is not pro-business. He is not pro-profits. He's not industry. He's not, especially the energy industry. If you got some more restraints on him, and especially if you get a regime change in 2016, you could see, I think, a real potential liftoff for the economy.
Yeah. Do you think we're going to see a Rand Paul with a serious run in the Republican nominee? Okay.
I do. I think he's going to be very strong in 2016. I don't know if he can win. I'd like to see him win. I'm doing a lot of work with him.
Yeah.
And if he, by the way, if he doesn't win in 2016, I think he'll be well set up in 2000. You know, who knows? But you know, oftentimes it takes one run, you know, a kind of trial run, before you win. And so
I'm sure that's what Hillary's thinking.
So that was what Mitt Romney thought as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I think he's got the message. I'm a Republican, and one of the attractions to Rand Paul is not only do I agree with him a lot of things, but I think he broadens the Republican base, brings new people into the party, especially young people and hopefully minorities, as a way to create a winning coalition.
Yeah. Now the Fed has thrown trillions at the economy. We've got these rock bottom interest rates. My question to you is, you know, we are getting 6 years away now from the last recession, or 5 years, I guess, technically, but even cyclically, we are due kind of for another recession. So what does the Fed do if we have another major slowdown?
I want the Fed to start raising interest rates. I think, we've got to start withdrawing this money from the economy. It's sloshing around out there. It has not caused inflation yet because it hasn't been spent and lent out and invested. But, I think now the prudent man theory says pull back. And by the way, I actually think when the Fed pulls back, that's good for the economy, not bad. So I'm counterintuitive on that. Most people on Wall Street, theythey want the cheap. They're addicted like crack cocaine to this easy money. But in the long term, easy money is not a good thing. I always say no country ever devalued themselves to prosperity. Yeah. So I would like to see the Fed. And by the way, I have to say that Janet Yellen, so far, I even though I don't agree with her philosophy, I applaud the fact that she is pulling back on the easy money.
So as a free market advocate, you do not want to see the Fed abolished, or you just kind of accept
I want to see the Fed. I want to see a rules-based Fed. I don't care. I don't even care that much what the rule is, but I think we make a big mistake putting power into the hands of one or two or three or four or five people. Yeah. Like she's the Wizard of Oz. Yeah. And I think it would be much more stabilizing and pro-growth if we had the dollar pegged to something. Yeah. Gold, commodities, maybe a market basket of commodities with gold, cotton, corn, silver, and let everyone know what the rules are. Yeah. Because right now you've got this cottage industry. It's bigger than a cottage industry. People just going around trying to predict what the Fed is going to do. Yeah. Wouldn't it be better if we had rules? Yeah. Now, and I'd also like to see, by the way, total transparency. I think every Fed meeting should have the TV cameras there. C-SPAN should be covering it. Why this veil of secrecy? Yeah. I've never could understand the rationale behind that. Can you?
No, I'm the little guy.
Right. So. No, I have no idea why those meetings, and then, they leak out the minutes of the meetings and so on. All of that, look, we want information to be readily available to everyone.
It's always bothered me, and I'm sure it bothers you, that a company can report great earnings and it has a little effect, but the Fed can come out with a rate cut or even just like a hawkish comment, and the Dow can go to 300 points.
Yeah, and it's almost like insider trading, right? Because those people who know what the Fed is doing or might get a glimpse of what Janet Yellen is thinking or what she had for breakfast today. Yeah. And again, why do you want a system? Why not have perestroika, openness, right? And also a rule. By the way, when Paul Volcker was Fed chairman, he was essentially using a commodity-based rule, and the economy exploded. The stock market did very well, and it was a kind of de facto rule-based system, and I think I would like to see a de jure rules-based system that basically takes away the discretion of the Fed, because the Fed has screwed up so many times. Why do we want to put the power into, it's like central planning.
Yeah. Last question. Yeah. The stock market's gone up now for over 2 years without a 10% correction. What's going on with the market?
I don't know. I am not. I'm the last person you want to ask that question, because look, in the long term, let me just say this. In the longer term, I'm bullish on the U.S. I just think, first of all, I'm bearish on Europe. The U.S. is, when it even comes to our monetary policy, I always say one of the reasons the dollar is rising, we're the least rotten apple in the cart, right? Yeah. Yeah, but if you're asking me what's going to happen in the next 3 months or 6 months with the Dow, I don't have an idea. And it is interesting that I've noticed in the last 8 to 10 weeks, more and more people are saying, are we at the top of this bubble? So when people start asking that question,
it's almost like it wouldn't be the top then, right? If a lot of people are thinking it's the top?
If people think we're getting to the top, there's a lot of nervousness and a sell impulse. So, but God forbid that we see another crash like we had in '99 and like we had in 2008, because those are gut-wrenching experiences. They cause recession. They throw people out of work. I'd rather see a minor correction than a crash. And but look, it's amazing to me we've been able to grow at all, given the dysfunction of Washington. I mean, can you think of a single thing that Washington has gotten right for the last 5 years? I can't.
No. Did you see the documentary Mitt on Netflix?
Just parts of it.
It was actually, I just saw it the other day, and it was really good. Mm-hmm. I did not vote for either of the major parties, but just in briefing, I'm
getting to know who
taking
he
up
is.
your time.
Yeah.
How did they fumble that so bad? How did Mitt Romney lose an election when everything was going against Obama? Well, with the exception of the media endorsing him.
Well, the media played a big role, no question about it. I think it all came down to one thing. The exit poll question, which of these two candidates do you think cares more about people like you? On that question, Mitt Romney lost 60-40.
Wow.
So that meant people, even though the economy stunk, Obama, that line that Bill Clinton used to use, I feel your pain. People didn't think Mitt Romney cared about them. And that's a big issue to people. The American people, look, presidential elections are popularity contests. Yeah. They really are. I mean, in most cases. And the fact is, people liked Barack Obama more than they liked Mitt Romney. They liked George Bush more than they liked John Kerry. They liked George Bush better than they liked, Al Gore. So Republicans better put somebody up in 2016 who is not just good at policy, but is likable.
Yeah. All right, Steve, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.